Your mind is at war with itself right now. Every single day, thousands of negative thoughts flood your consciousness, telling you that you're not good enough, that you'll fail, that you should give up before you even try. And here's the brutal truth most people don't want to face. If you don't take control of these thoughts, they will control you. They will sabotage your dreams, destroy your confidence, and keep you trapped in a life of mediocrity forever. But today, that ends. Today, you're going to learn how to kill negative thinking once and for all. Not manage it, not cope with it, but completely eliminate it from your mind. This isn't about positive thinking or feel-good affirmations. This is about mental warfare. This is about taking back control of your mind and reprogramming it for success, confidence, and unstoppable action. By the end of this, you will have a complete system to identify, attack, and destroy every negative thought before it can poison your mind. You will think differently, act differently, and live differently. But only if you're ready to do the work. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Silent Killer Destroying Your Life. Right now, as you're listening to this, your mind is running a constant stream of commentary about your life. Most people think this inner voice is just normal, that everyone has it, that it's just part of being human. But what they don't realize is that for most people, this voice is not their friend. It's their worst enemy, disguised as their own thoughts. Negative thinking isn't just having a bad day or feeling down sometimes. It's a systematic pattern of self-sabotage that operates like a virus in your mind. Every time you think about taking a risk, it tells you all the ways you could fail. Every time you set a goal, it reminds you of every time you've quit before. Every time you start to feel confident, it brings up every embarrassing moment from your past. Think about the last time you wanted to do something important. Maybe it was starting a business, asking someone out, applying for a better job, or even just speaking up in a meeting. What happened in your mind? Did you immediately start thinking about all the ways it could go wrong? Did you start imagining the worst-case scenarios? Did you talk yourself out of it before you even tried? That's negative thinking in action. And here's what's terrifying about it. It doesn't just affect your mood. It affects your actions. When your mind is constantly feeding you reasons why you can't succeed, why you shouldn't try, why you're not good enough, you start to believe it. And when you believe it, you stop taking action. You stop pursuing opportunities. You stop growing. You stop living. The cost of negative thinking is not just emotional pain. It's missed opportunities, unfulfilled potential, and a life lived far below your capabilities. Every dream you've given up on, every goal you've abandoned, every risk you've avoided because you convinced yourself it wouldn't work. That's the real damage negative thinking has done to your life. But here's what's even worse. Negative thinking is addictive. Your brain becomes dependent on it because it feels safer to expect failure than to risk disappointment. It feels easier to stay small than to face the possibility of rejection. It feels more comfortable to remain mediocre than to risk finding out you might not be as capable as you hope. This addiction to negative thinking creates a downward spiral. The more you think negatively, the worse you feel. The worse you feel, the less action you take. The less action you take, the fewer results you get. The fewer results you get, the more evidence your mind has that you're not capable of success. And the cycle continues, getting stronger and more destructive with each repetition. Most people live their entire lives trapped in this cycle. They accept that negative thinking is just part of their personality, that they're naturally pessimistic, that they can't help but see the worst in every situation. They've been conditioned to believe that this voice in their head that constantly criticizes, doubts, and discourages them is actually trying to protect them. But protection from what? Protection from success? Protection from growth? Protection from living up to your potential? That's not protection. That's imprisonment. And the prison guard is your own mind. The truth is, negative thinking serves no useful purpose in your life. It doesn't keep you safe. It keeps you stuck. It doesn't make you realistic. It makes you pessimistic. It doesn't help you avoid failure. It guarantees failure by preventing you from even trying. Every successful person, every high achiever, every person who has built something meaningful with their life has had to wage war against negative thinking. They didn't become successful because they were naturally positive. They became successful because they learned to identify and eliminate negative thoughts before those thoughts could sabotage their actions. This is the skill that separates winners from losers, achievers from dreamers, successful people from everyone else. The ability to control your thoughts instead of being controlled by them. The ability to redirect your mental energy toward solutions instead of problems, toward possibilities instead of limitations, toward action instead of excuses. But here's the challenge. Your brain doesn't want to give up negative thinking easily. It's been using this pattern for years, maybe decades. It's comfortable with negativity because negativity feels predictable. Your brain would rather deal with the familiar pain of negative thinking than face the unknown territory of positive, action-oriented thoughts. That's why you can't just decide to stop thinking negatively and expect it to work. That's why positive affirmations and feel-good mantras fail for most people. You're not just changing your thoughts. You're rewiring decades of mental programming. You're fighting against neural pathways that have been strengthened through years of repetition. This is a war. And wars are not won by hoping the enemy will just go away. They're won through strategy, discipline, and relentless execution. You need to understand how negative thinking works, why it's so powerful, and exactly how to systematically destroy it before it destroys your life. Chapter 2. Why your brain is programmed to sabotage you. To kill negative thinking, you first need to understand why your brain creates it in the first place. This isn't random. This isn't a flaw in your personality. This is your brain following its most basic programming, and that programming is working against your success. Your brain evolved over millions of years with one primary objective: keep you alive, not happy, not successful, not fulfilled, just alive. And in the dangerous world our ancestors lived in, the brains that survived were the ones that were constantly scanning for threats, always expecting danger, always preparing for the worst-case scenario. This is called the negativity bias, and it's hardwired into every human brain. Your brain is literally designed to pay more attention to negative information than positive information. It's designed to remember failures more vividly than successes. It's designed to focus on what could go wrong rather than what could go right. In the ancient world, this served a purpose. If your ancestor heard a rustling in the bushes, The brain that assumed it was a predator and ran away was more likely to survive than the brain that assumed it was just the wind and stayed put. The pessimistic brain lived to pass on its genes. The optimistic brain often became lunch. But here's the problem. We're no longer living in the ancient world. The threats that your brain is constantly scanning for don't exist anymore. You're not going to be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger if you start a business. You're not going to die if someone rejects you. You're not going to be cast out of the tribe if you speak up in a meeting. But your brain doesn't know that. It's still operating on the same ancient programming, treating every challenge as a life or death situation, every risk as a potential catastrophe, every opportunity as a trap waiting to destroy you. This is why your brain floods you with negative thoughts when you try to do anything outside your comfort zone. It's not trying to make you miserable. It's trying to keep you safe. But the safety it's providing is the safety of mediocrity, the safety of never growing, the safety of a life lived in fear. Think about what happens in your mind when you consider taking a big risk. Let's say you want to quit your job and start your own business. Immediately, your brain starts generating scenarios. What if you fail? What if you run out of money? What if everyone thinks you're crazy? What if you're not smart enough? What if the economy crashes? What if your idea doesn't work? Your brain can generate an infinite number of reasons why you shouldn't take action. It's incredibly creative when it comes to imagining disasters. But notice what it doesn't do. It doesn't spend nearly as much energy imagining all the ways you could succeed. It doesn't automatically generate thoughts about how good you'll feel when you build something meaningful, how proud you'll be when you prove everyone wrong, how free you'll feel when you're no longer dependent on a boss for your income. This imbalance isn't an accident. Your brain is programmed to assume the worst because, from an evolutionary perspective, it's better to be wrong about danger than to be wrong about safety. If you assume there's a threat when there isn't one, you waste some energy running away. If you assume there's no threat when there is one, you die. But in the modern world, this programming is not just unhelpful. It's destructive. The things that will actually harm you in today's world are not the things your brain is worried about. The real threats to your well-being are stagnation, complacency, and living below your potential. The real danger is not taking risks, not growing, not pursuing your dreams. Your brain is protecting you from imaginary dangers while exposing you to real ones. It's keeping you safe from failure while guaranteeing mediocrity. It's preventing you from getting hurt while ensuring that you never truly live. This is why you can't trust your thoughts. This is why that voice in your head that tells you to play it safe, to avoid risks, to stick with what you know is not your friend. It's an outdated security system that's keeping you trapped in a prison of your own making. But understanding this programming is the first step to overcoming it. Once you realize that negative thoughts are not insights, they're just your brain's default response to anything unfamiliar, you can start to see them for what they really are. Obstacles to be overcome, not truths to be believed. Your brain will never stop generating negative thoughts. This programming is too deep, too fundamental to your survival instincts to simply disappear. But you can learn to recognize these thoughts for what they are and refuse to let them control your actions. The most successful people in the world don't have brains that work differently than yours. They have the same negativity bias, the same ancient programming, the same tendency to imagine worst-case scenarios. The difference is that they've learned to override this programming. They've learned to act in spite of negative thoughts, not because of them. This is the skill you must develop. Not the ability to stop having negative thoughts. That's impossible. But the ability to have negative thoughts without being controlled by them. The ability to hear your brain's warnings and objections and then consciously choose to ignore them when they're not serving your growth. Your brain is not your enemy, but it's not your ally either when it comes to achieving success. It's a tool, and like any tool, it can be used effectively or ineffectively. Right now, it's being used to limit your potential. But once you understand how it works, you can start using it to expand your potential instead. Chapter 3. The 4 types of mental poison. Negative thinking isn't just one thing. It's a complex system of mental patterns that work together to keep you stuck. To effectively eliminate negative thinking from your life, you need to understand the different types of mental poison that your brain produces and how each one sabotages your success in its own unique way. There are 4 primary types of negative thinking that destroy most people's lives. Each type has its own characteristics, its own triggers, and its own devastating effects on your ability to take action and achieve your goals. Once you can identify these patterns in your own thinking, you can start to attack them systematically. The first type is catastrophic thinking. This is when your brain takes any situation and immediately jumps to the worst possible outcome. You don't just think about what could go wrong. You assume that everything will go wrong in the most dramatic and devastating way possible. Catastrophic thinking sounds like this. If I start this business, I'll lose everything and end up homeless. If I ask for a promotion, they'll fire me and I'll never find another job. If I try to get in shape, I'll injure myself and be worse off than before. If I put myself out there romantically, I'll get rejected and humiliated in front of everyone. Your brain doesn't just consider failure. It assumes catastrophic failure. It doesn't just think about setbacks. It imagines complete destruction. This type of thinking is particularly toxic because it makes any risk seem unreasonable. When your brain is convinced that trying anything new will lead to total disaster, it becomes impossible to take action. The second type is all or nothing thinking. This is when your brain sees everything in black and white, with no middle ground, no gray areas, no room for partial success or learning from mistakes. You're either perfect or you're a failure. You either succeed completely or you've wasted your time. All or nothing thinking sounds like this. If I can't do this perfectly, there's no point in doing it at all. If I mess up once, I've ruined everything. If I'm not the best, I'm worthless. If this doesn't work exactly as planned, it's a complete failure. This type of thinking is devastating because it makes any setback feel like a total defeat. When you believe that anything less than perfection is failure, you become paralyzed by the fear of making mistakes. You either don't start at all, or you quit at the first sign of difficulty. The third type is victim thinking. This is when your brain convinces you that everything bad that happens to you is someone else's fault, that you have no control over your circumstances, that you're powerless to change your situation. You become addicted to feeling sorry for yourself and making excuses for why you can't succeed. Victim thinking sounds like this. I can't succeed because I didn't have the right opportunities. It's not fair that other people have advantages I don't have. The economy is bad. That's why I can't get ahead. If only I had been born into a different family, I could have made something of myself. The system is rigged against people like me. This type of thinking is particularly insidious because it feels justified. There are always external factors that make success more difficult. There are always unfair advantages that other people have. But victim thinking takes these real challenges and uses them as excuses to stop trying, to give up on your goals, to accept mediocrity as inevitable. The fourth type is comparison thinking. This is when your brain becomes obsessed with measuring your progress, your success, your worth against other people. Instead of focusing on your own growth and development, you become consumed with whether you're doing better or worse than everyone else. Comparison thinking sounds like this: everyone else is further ahead than I am. I'm too old to start now. Look at all these young people who are already successful. I'll never be as good as that person, so why bother trying? Everyone else makes this look easy. I must not be cut out for this. This type of thinking is toxic because it makes your sense of progress dependent on other people's achievements. When you're constantly comparing yourself to others, you either feel superior and become complacent, or you feel inferior and become discouraged. Either way, you stop focusing on what you need to do to improve your own situation. These four types of mental poison often work together. You might start with comparison thinking. Notice that other people seem more successful than you. Then switch to victim thinking about how unfair the world is. Then engage in catastrophic thinking about how trying to change your situation will only make things worse. And finally settle into all or nothing thinking, where you convince yourself that unless you can guarantee perfect success, there's no point in trying at all. The most dangerous thing about these thinking patterns is that they feel logical. Your brain presents them as rational analysis, as realistic assessment, as practical wisdom, but they're not rational. They're emotional reactions disguised as logical thoughts. They're fear and insecurity wearing the mask of intelligence and prudence. Each of these thinking patterns serves the same purpose. They give you reasons not to take action. They provide you with seemingly valid justifications for staying in your comfort zone, avoiding risks, and maintaining the status quo. They protect you from the possibility of failure by ensuring that you never really try. But here's what these patterns don't protect you from: the slow, grinding pain of regret, the daily frustration of knowing you're capable of more but not doing anything about it, the long-term consequences of playing it safe while your dreams slowly die. The people who achieve extraordinary things in life don't have different thoughts than you do. They have the same doubts, the same fears, the same mental poison flowing through their minds. The difference is that they've learned to recognize these thoughts as mental poison, not as truth. They've learned to see catastrophic thinking as paranoia, all-or-nothing thinking as perfectionism, victim thinking as excuse-making, and comparison thinking as distraction. Most importantly, they've learned that having these thoughts doesn't mean they have to obey them. You can have a catastrophic thought and still take action. You can notice yourself thinking in all-or-nothing terms and still pursue incremental progress. You can feel like a victim and still take responsibility for your future. You can compare yourself to others and still focus on your own path. The goal is not to never have these thoughts. That's impossible. The goal is to recognize them when they arise, understand what they're trying to do to you, and refuse to let them control your behavior. This requires constant vigilance because your brain will keep producing these patterns automatically. But with practice, you can learn to see them coming and neutralize them before they sabotage your actions. Chapter 4. The Anatomy of a Negative Thought. To effectively kill negative thinking, you need to understand exactly how negative thoughts work. Most people treat thoughts as if they're facts, as if thinking something makes it true. But thoughts are not facts. They're mental events that arise and pass away in your consciousness. And once you understand the anatomy of a negative thought, you can learn to dissect it and destroy it. Every negative thought follows the same basic structure. It has a trigger, an emotional response, a story, and a conclusion. Understanding each of these components gives you multiple points where you can intervene and break the negative thinking cycle. The trigger is the external event or internal sensation that starts the negative thought process. This could be anything. Seeing someone more successful than you, remembering a past failure, facing a new challenge, feeling uncertain about the future, or even just having too much time to think. Triggers are not inherently negative. The same trigger that produces negative thoughts in one person might produce positive thoughts in another. The trigger is just the starting point. What matters is how your brain processes and responds to it. Let's say the trigger is that you see a job posting for your dream job. For someone with healthy thinking patterns, this trigger might produce thoughts like, "This looks interesting. I should apply. I have some of the qualifications they're looking for. Even if I don't get this one, applying will be good practice." But for someone trapped in negative thinking patterns, the same trigger produces very different thoughts. "I'm not qualified enough. They'll never hire someone like me. I'll just embarrass myself if I apply. There are probably hundreds of better candidates." The trigger hasn't changed, only the brain's response to it. This is crucial to understand because it means that negative thinking is not caused by external circumstances. It's caused by your brain's interpretation of those circumstances. After the trigger comes the emotional response. This is where your body reacts to the thought with physical sensations. Anxiety, fear, anger, sadness, frustration. Your heart rate might increase, your breathing might become shallow, your muscles might tense up. You might feel a sinking sensation in your stomach or a tightness in your chest. Most people think that the external event causes the emotional response directly. They think, "I saw the job posting and it made me feel anxious." But that's not how it works. The sequence is trigger, thought, emotion. The job posting doesn't make you feel anxious. Your thoughts about the job posting make you feel anxious. This distinction is critical because it means you have control over your emotional responses. You can't always control what happens to you, but you can learn to control how you think about what happens to you. And when you change your thoughts, your emotions change automatically. The third component is the story. This is where your brain creates a narrative to explain and justify the emotional response. The story usually sounds rational and logical, even though it's based on assumptions, projections, and fears rather than facts. Using our job posting example, the story might sound like this. "I've been in my current position for 3 years, and I haven't been promoted. That proves I don't have what it takes to advance in my career. This job requires 5 years of experience, and I only have 3. They probably want someone with a degree from a better university than mine. Even if I somehow got an interview, I'd probably say something stupid and embarrass myself. And even if by some miracle I got the job, I'd probably fail at it and get fired. Then I'd be worse off than I am now, and everyone would know I'm a failure. Notice how the story takes a simple trigger, seeing a job posting, and spins it into an elaborate narrative of inevitable failure. The story feels convincing because it references real facts. You've been in your current position for 3 years. The job does require 5 years of experience, but it combines these facts with assumptions and projections that have no basis in reality. The fourth component is the conclusion. This is where your brain decides what action to take based on the story it has created. And because negative thinking always tells stories of failure and disaster, the conclusion is almost always the same. Don't take action. In our example, the conclusion would be, I shouldn't apply for this job because I'll just get rejected and feel worse about myself. This conclusion feels like the logical result of careful analysis, but it's actually the predetermined outcome that your brain was working toward from the beginning. Here's the most important thing to understand about this process. It happens automatically and almost instantaneously. From trigger to conclusion, the entire sequence can unfold in seconds. By the time you're consciously aware of what's happening, your brain has already decided that taking action is too risky, and you've already started feeling the emotions that will keep you stuck. But once you understand this anatomy, you can learn to intervene at each stage of the process. You can't always control the triggers you encounter, but you can learn to recognize them and prepare for your brain's likely response. You can learn to notice the emotional reactions as they arise and remind yourself that feelings are not facts. You can learn to question the stories your brain creates and demand evidence for its dramatic conclusions. And you can learn to override the automatic conclusion with conscious decision-making. The key is developing awareness. Most people go through this entire process unconsciously. They have a trigger, feel bad, accept whatever story their brain creates, and then act on the conclusion without ever examining whether any of it makes sense. But successful people have learned to slow down this process. They've learned to catch negative thoughts in real time and examine them critically. They've learned to ask questions like, is this thought helping me or hurting me? What evidence do I have that this story is true? What would I tell a friend who was thinking this way? What action would I take if I weren't afraid? This doesn't happen overnight. It takes practice to develop the awareness and skill to dissect negative thoughts as they arise. But once you master this ability, negative thinking loses its power over you. You stop being the victim of your own thoughts and start being the director of your own mind. Remember, the goal is not to never have negative thoughts. That's impossible. The goal is to recognize negative thoughts as mental events, not as truth. To see them as one possible interpretation of reality, not as the only interpretation. To understand that just because you think something doesn't mean you have to believe it. And just because you believe something doesn't mean you have to act on it. Chapter 5. Breaking the negative thought loop. Now that you understand how negative thoughts work, you need to learn how to break free from them in real time. This is where most people fail. They understand the theory of positive thinking, They know that negative thoughts are harmful. But when those thoughts arise, they still get swept away by them. Breaking free from negative thinking requires a systematic approach. You need specific techniques that you can use in the moment when negative thoughts arise. You need a step-by-step process that can interrupt the automatic patterns and redirect your mental energy toward productive thinking. The first step is recognition. You cannot change what you don't notice. Most negative thinking happens below the level of conscious awareness. You start feeling bad, and by the time you realize what's happening, you've already been thinking negatively for minutes or even hours. To develop recognition, you need to become a detective of your own mind. You need to start paying attention to your thoughts throughout the day. Set reminders on your phone to check in with yourself every hour and ask, what am I thinking right now? How am I feeling? What story is my brain telling me? The goal is not to judge your thoughts or immediately try to change them. The goal is simply to notice them. You can't break a pattern you're not aware of. So awareness is the foundation of everything else. Start paying attention to your physical sensations as well. Negative thinking almost always produces physical symptoms. Tension in your shoulders, tightness in your chest, a knot in your stomach, shallow breathing. These physical signals often appear before you're consciously aware of the negative thoughts. So they can serve as early warning systems. When you notice these physical sensations, stop and ask yourself, what was I just thinking about? Often, you'll discover that your brain was running negative scenarios without your conscious knowledge. The second step is interruption. Once you've recognized that you're caught in negative thinking, you need to interrupt the pattern immediately. The longer you allow negative thoughts to continue, the stronger they become and the harder they are to stop. One of the most effective interruption techniques is the mental stop sign. As soon as you notice negative thinking, mentally shout, "Stop!" Visualize a bright red stop sign in your mind. Some people find it helpful to actually say, "Stop" out loud, or even clap their hands to create a physical interruption. This might seem simplistic, but it works because it breaks the automatic flow of negative thoughts. It creates a moment of conscious awareness where you can choose what to think next instead of being carried along by the negative momentum. Another powerful interruption technique is the pattern break. Do something physical that completely changes your state. Stand up and stretch. Take 5 deep breaths. Splash cold water on your face. Go for a quick walk. The goal is to disrupt the negative thinking pattern by changing your physiology. Your mind and body are connected. When you're thinking negatively, your body adopts a negative posture. Shoulders slumped, head down, breathing shallow. By consciously changing your physical state, you can influence your mental state. The third step is challenge. Once you've interrupted the negative thinking pattern, you need to challenge the thoughts that were running through your mind. This means questioning them, demanding evidence, and examining them critically instead of accepting them as truth. Ask yourself these questions. Is this thought based on facts or on fears? What evidence do I have that this thought is true? What evidence do I have that contradicts this thought? How is this thought helping me? What would I tell a friend who was thinking this way? Most negative thoughts cannot withstand careful examination. They're based on assumptions, worst-case scenarios, and emotional reactions rather than objective reality. When you start demanding evidence and asking critical questions, the thoughts often reveal themselves to be much less convincing than they initially seemed. For example, if you're thinking, "I'm not smart enough to start my own business," challenge that thought. What evidence do I have that I'm not smart enough? What does smart enough even mean? Do I have to be the smartest person in the world to start a business? What about all the successful business owners who aren't geniuses? What skills do I have that would be valuable in business? What could I learn if I don't know something? The fourth step is replacement. After you've interrupted and challenged the negative thought, you need to replace it with a more productive thought. This is not about forced positivity or pretending everything is perfect. It's about choosing thoughts that help you take action instead of thoughts that keep you stuck. Instead of thinking, "I'm not smart enough to start a business," you might replace it with, "I may not know everything about business, but I can learn. I have skills and experience that would be valuable. Even if I fail, I'll learn something that makes me better prepared for the next opportunity." Instead of thinking, "I'll never be successful," you might replace it with, "Success takes time and effort. I'm willing to put in the work and learn from my mistakes." The replacement thought doesn't have to be wildly optimistic. It just has to be more realistic and more conducive to taking action than the original negative thought. The fifth step is action. This is the most crucial step, and it's where most people fail. They successfully interrupt, challenge, and replace their negative thoughts, but then they go back to their normal activities without taking any action toward their goals. But here's the truth. The best way to prove to your brain that negative thoughts are wrong is to take action in spite of them. Every time you act despite negative thinking, you weaken the pattern. Every time you let negative thoughts stop you from acting, you strengthen the pattern. The action doesn't have to be massive. It can be as simple as making one phone call, sending one email, or taking one small step toward your goal. The key is to take some action while the positive momentum is fresh, before negative thinking has a chance to regain control. This 5-step process: recognize, interrupt, challenge, replace, action, becomes easier with practice. At first, it will feel awkward and mechanical. You might not catch negative thoughts until they've been running for a while. You might struggle to come up with good challenges or replacements. You might forget to take action. That's normal. Like any skill, this takes time to develop. But if you commit to practicing this process consistently, it will become automatic. You'll start catching negative thoughts earlier and earlier. You'll get better at challenging them and replacing them with productive thoughts. And most importantly, you'll start taking action despite negative thinking, which will gradually reprogram your brain to default to more positive patterns. Remember, the goal is not perfection. You will still have negative thoughts. You will still sometimes get caught in negative thinking loops. But each time you practice this process, you're building the mental muscle that will eventually allow you to control your thoughts instead of being controlled by them. Chapter 6: Rewiring Your Brain for Mental Dominance. Understanding negative thinking is only the beginning. Now, you need to understand how to physically rewire your brain to default to productive thinking patterns instead of destructive ones. This isn't metaphorical. This is literal brain surgery that you can perform on yourself through specific mental exercises and behavioral changes. Your brain operates on a principle called neuroplasticity, which means it can literally reshape itself based on how you use it. Every thought you think strengthens certain neural pathways, while weakening others. Every action you take creates new connections while allowing old ones to fade away. This means that your current thinking patterns are not permanent. They're just the result of years of repetition. Think of your brain like a forest with countless paths running through it. The negative thinking patterns are like well-worn highways that have been traveled so many times they've become deep ruts. When a thought enters your mind, it naturally follows these established pathways because they're the path of least resistance. But here's the revolutionary truth. You can create new pathways. You can build new mental highways that lead to different destinations. And if you travel these new pathways consistently while avoiding the old ones, the old negative pathways will eventually become overgrown and unusable, while the new positive pathways become the new defaults. This process requires 3 specific types of mental training that most people never do. First, you need to strengthen your awareness muscle through mindfulness practice. Second, you need to build new thought patterns through deliberate cognitive rehearsal. Third, you need to reinforce these patterns through consistent action that proves to your brain that the new thoughts lead to better results. Let's start with awareness training. Most people live their entire lives on mental autopilot. They think the same thoughts, feel the same emotions, and take the same actions day after day without ever examining whether these patterns are serving them. But you cannot change patterns you're not aware of. So, developing moment-to-moment awareness of your thinking is absolutely essential. Set up awareness triggers throughout your day. Every time you check your phone, ask yourself, what have I been thinking about for the last hour? Every time you feel a strong emotion, pause and ask, what thought just triggered this feeling? Every time you feel resistance to taking action, stop and examine, what story is my brain telling me right now? The goal is not to judge or immediately change your thoughts. The goal is simply to notice them. You're developing the ability to observe your own mind from a detached perspective, like a scientist studying an interesting specimen. This observer perspective is crucial because it creates space between you and your thoughts, allowing you to see them as mental events rather than absolute truths. Practice the 2-minute awareness drill. Set a timer for 2 minutes and do nothing but observe your thoughts without trying to control them. Don't meditate. Don't try to empty your mind. Just watch what thoughts arise and notice how they flow from one to another. Most people discover that their minds are far more chaotic and negative than they realized. This exercise shows you exactly what you're working with. Next, you need to build new thought patterns through cognitive rehearsal. This means deliberately practicing productive thoughts until they become automatic. Just like you can train your body to perform physical movements through repetition, you can train your brain to produce specific thoughts through mental rehearsal. Create a list of your most common negative thoughts and write down a productive alternative for each one. For example, if you often think, "I'm not good enough," your alternative might be, "I'm constantly improving and learning." If you think, "This will never work," your alternative might be, "I'll figure out how to make this work or learn something valuable trying." Practice these alternative thoughts daily. Spend 5 minutes each morning and evening deliberately thinking these new thoughts. Don't just repeat them like meaningless affirmations. Actually focus on the meaning and imagine what your life would be like if you truly believed them. Visualize yourself acting with confidence, taking risks, persisting through challenges, and achieving your goals. The key is emotional engagement. Your brain pays more attention to thoughts that are accompanied by strong emotions. So when you practice your new thought patterns, don't just think them, feel them. Generate excitement about your potential, satisfaction about your progress, determination about your goals. The stronger the emotional charge, the deeper the new patterns will be carved into your brain. But the most powerful way to rewire your brain is through action that contradicts your negative thoughts. Every time you act despite fear, every time you persist despite doubt, every time you take a risk despite uncertainty, you're sending a powerful message to your brain that the negative thoughts were wrong. Your brain learns from results, not from intentions. You can practice positive thinking all day long, but if you never take action that challenges your negative beliefs, your brain will continue to treat those beliefs as accurate. However, when you consistently take action that proves negative thoughts wrong, your brain has no choice but to update its programming. Start with small actions that directly contradict your most limiting beliefs. If you believe you're not confident enough to speak up, force yourself to ask one question in every meeting. If you believe you're not disciplined enough to stick with goals, commit to one small daily habit and follow through no matter what. If you believe you're not smart enough to learn new skills, dedicate 30 minutes each day to studying something challenging. These actions might feel uncomfortable or even terrifying at first. That's normal. Your brain will resist because you're literally asking it to abandon patterns that have been its default for years or decades. But discomfort is the price of growth. Every moment of discomfort you endure while taking productive action is literally rewiring your brain for future success. Track your progress obsessively. Keep a daily log of every time you catch a negative thought and replace it with a productive one. Record every time you take action despite fear or doubt. Celebrate every small victory because each one is evidence that your brain is changing. Most people give up on this process too early because they don't see immediate results. But neuroplasticity takes time. You didn't develop negative thinking patterns overnight, and you won't eliminate them overnight. But if you consistently practice awareness, rehearse new thought patterns, and take action that contradicts negative beliefs, you will literally reshape your brain. The timeline varies for different people, but most people start noticing significant changes within 30 to 60 days of consistent practice. They find that negative thoughts arise less frequently and have less emotional impact when they do arise. They notice that productive thoughts start appearing automatically in situations where they used to default to negativity. Most importantly, they find that taking action becomes easier because their brain is no longer constantly generating reasons not to try. This is not positive thinking or wishful thinking. This is brain training based on neuroscience. You're not trying to convince yourself that everything is perfect or that success is guaranteed. You're simply training your brain to focus on possibilities instead of problems, solutions instead of obstacles, action instead of excuses. Chapter 7. Advanced Thought Detection and Elimination. Now that you understand how to rewire your brain, you need to develop advanced skills for detecting and eliminating negative thoughts before they can take root. Most people only notice negative thinking after it's already affected their mood and motivation. But you can learn to catch these thoughts much earlier in the process, sometimes even before they fully form in your consciousness. Advanced thought detection requires understanding the early warning signs that negative thinking is beginning to emerge. These signs appear in your body, your emotions, and your behavior before the actual thoughts become clear in your mind. By learning to recognize these signals, you can intervene much more quickly and effectively. The first warning sign is physical tension. Negative thinking almost always produces physical stress responses. Tightness in your jaw, tension in your shoulders, clenching in your stomach, changes in your breathing pattern. These physical responses often occur within seconds of a negative thought arising, sometimes before you're even consciously aware of what you're thinking. Start conducting regular body scans throughout your day. Every hour, take 30 seconds to check in with your physical state. Are your shoulders tense? Is your jaw clenched? Is your breathing shallow? Are you holding tension anywhere in your body? When you notice physical tension, immediately ask yourself, what was I just thinking about? Often, you'll discover that your mind was running negative scenarios without your conscious knowledge. The second warning sign is emotional shifts. Your emotions respond to your thoughts almost instantaneously. A sudden feeling of anxiety, discouragement, frustration, or hopelessness usually indicates that negative thinking has begun, even if you haven't identified the specific thoughts yet. Develop emotional awareness by rating your mood on a scale of 1 to 10 every few hours. When you notice your mood dropping, stop and trace backward. When did I start feeling this way? What was happening right before my mood shifted? What thoughts might have triggered this emotional change? This backward tracing often reveals negative thought patterns that were operating below your conscious awareness. The third warning sign is behavioral changes. Negative thinking affects your actions before you're fully aware of it. You might start procrastinating on important tasks, avoiding social interactions, consuming more entertainment or distractions, or engaging in other avoidance behaviors. These behavioral shifts are often the first visible signs that negative thinking has taken control. Pay attention to your impulses and urges throughout the day. When you suddenly feel like checking social media instead of working, watching TV instead of exercising, or avoiding a difficult conversation, ask yourself, what am I trying to avoid thinking about? What negative thoughts might be driving this behavior? Often, procrastination and avoidance are attempts to escape negative thoughts rather than deal with them directly. Once you've developed the ability to detect negative thinking early, you need advanced elimination techniques that go beyond the basic recognition and replacement methods. These techniques are designed to destroy negative thoughts completely rather than simply managing them. The first advanced technique is thought interrogation. When you catch a negative thought, don't just replace it. Interrogate it ruthlessly. Demand that it prove itself with evidence. Challenge every assumption it makes. Question every conclusion it draws. Treat it like a hostile witness that you're cross-examining in court. For example, if the thought is, "I'll never be successful," interrogate it. What exactly do you mean by successful? What evidence do you have that I'll never achieve success? What definition of success are you using? How many different paths to success have I actually tried? What would have to be true for this statement to be accurate? What would successful people say about this thought? The goal is not just to find flaws in the thought, but to completely dismantle its logic until it becomes obviously ridiculous. Most negative thoughts cannot withstand serious intellectual scrutiny because they're based on emotion and fear rather than facts and logic. The second advanced technique is thought starvation. Negative thoughts gain power through attention and repetition. The more you think about them, argue with them, or try to convince yourself they're wrong, the stronger they become. But you can starve them to death by completely withdrawing your attention. When a negative thought arises, acknowledge it briefly. I notice I'm having the thought that I'm not good enough. And then immediately redirect your attention to something else. Don't engage with the thought. Don't analyze it. Don't try to argue with it. Simply shift your focus to a physical task, a current project, or anything that requires active mental engagement. This technique works because thoughts are like fires. They need the fuel of attention to keep burning. When you stop feeding them attention, they naturally fade away. The key is to be ruthless about not engaging with negative thoughts, even when they seem important or urgent. The third advanced technique is thought labeling. Instead of getting caught up in the content of negative thoughts, learn to recognize them as examples of specific patterns you've already identified. When you notice catastrophic thinking, simply label it. Catastrophic thinking. When you catch yourself in all or nothing thinking, label it. All or nothing thinking. This labeling creates psychological distance between you and the thought. Instead of being trapped inside the thought and experiencing it as reality, you're observing it from outside as a predictable mental pattern. This shifts you from being the victim of your thoughts to being the scientist studying them. The fourth advanced technique is preemptive strikes. Once you understand your personal negative thinking patterns, you can anticipate when they're likely to arise and prepare counter-strategies in advance. If you know that you always think negatively before important meetings, you can prepare specific thoughts and affirmations to use before those meetings. If you know that you spiral into negative thinking when you're tired, you can have energy management strategies ready. Create a negative thinking prevention plan. Identify your most common triggers, your typical negative thought patterns, and the situations where you're most vulnerable. Then develop specific strategies for each scenario. When you encounter these situations, you'll already know exactly how to respond instead of being caught off guard. The fifth advanced technique is thought replacement acceleration. Instead of trying to replace negative thoughts with slightly more positive ones, learn to replace them with thoughts that are so compelling and exciting that your brain naturally gravitates toward them. For example, instead of replacing "I might fail" with "I might succeed," replace it with "I'm about to learn something valuable that will make me stronger regardless of the outcome." Instead of replacing "this is hard" with "I can do this," replace it with "this challenge is exactly what I need to develop the skills that will set me apart from everyone else." The replacement thoughts should be so much more interesting and inspiring than the negative thoughts that your brain prefers to think about them. This creates positive momentum instead of just neutral thinking. These advanced techniques require practice and patience to master. Start with one technique at a time and practice it consistently for at least 2 weeks before adding another one. The goal is to develop such strong negative thought detection and elimination skills that negative thinking rarely gets a chance to influence your emotions or actions. Remember, the ultimate goal is not to never have negative thoughts. That's impossible. The goal is to become so skilled at detecting and eliminating them that they lose their power to control your life. When negative thoughts arise, you'll notice them immediately, handle them efficiently, and get back to productive thinking without losing momentum. Chapter 8. Building mental immunity against negativity. Eliminating existing negative thoughts is only half the battle. The other half is building immunity against future negative thinking, so that you become naturally resistant to the mental poison that constantly tries to infect your mind. This requires developing specific mental habits and protective systems that prevent negative thoughts from taking root in the first place. Mental immunity works similarly to physical immunity. When your body is exposed to a virus, your immune system recognizes it as a threat and neutralizes it before it can make you sick. Similarly, when your mind is exposed to negative thoughts, a strong mental immune system can recognize them as threats and neutralize them before they can affect your emotions and actions. Building mental immunity requires 3 core components: mental strength training, environmental design, and social immunity. Each component works together to create a comprehensive defense system against negative thinking. Mental strength training is like physical exercise for your mind. Just as regular physical exercise makes your body stronger and more resistant to illness, regular mental exercise makes your mind stronger and more resistant to negative thinking. This involves deliberately exposing yourself to small amounts of mental stress and challenge so that you develop the psychological resilience to handle larger challenges without breaking down. Start with controlled adversity training. Deliberately put yourself in slightly uncomfortable situations that challenge your normal thinking patterns. Take cold showers to build tolerance for discomfort. Practice public speaking to build confidence in facing fear. Exercise when you don't feel like it to build discipline. Have difficult conversations to build courage. The key is that these challenges are voluntary and controlled. You're choosing to face small amounts of adversity when you're mentally prepared, rather than being overwhelmed by adversity when you're unprepared. This builds psychological muscle memory that you can draw on when real challenges arise. Practice negative thought simulation. This might sound counterintuitive, but deliberately imagining worst-case scenarios and then working through how you would handle them actually makes you more resistant to negative thinking when these scenarios arise naturally. It's like psychological vaccination, exposing yourself to a controlled dose of negativity to build immunity against the real thing. For example, if you're worried about failing at a new business venture, deliberately imagine specific ways it could fail, and then develop detailed plans for how you would respond to each scenario. What would you do if you ran out of money? How would you handle criticism and rejection? What would your next steps be if the first version didn't work? This exercise accomplishes 2 things. It shows you that even worst-case scenarios are survivable and manageable. And it gives you concrete action plans that reduce uncertainty and fear. When your brain tries to scare you with negative possibilities, you can respond with, "I've already thought about that, and here's exactly what I would do." Environmental design is about creating external conditions that naturally promote positive thinking while discouraging negative thinking. Your environment has a massive impact on your mental state, and most people never take conscious control of this factor. Audit your information diet. What are you reading, watching, and listening to every day? If you're consuming news that focuses on disasters and problems, social media that promotes comparison and envy, or entertainment that glorifies victimhood and cynicism, you're feeding your brain exactly the kind of input that generates negative thinking. Replace passive consumption with active learning. Instead of scrolling through social media, read books about skills you want to develop. Instead of watching shows about other people's drama, listen to podcasts about achievement and success. Instead of following news about things you can't control, study topics that will help you build the life you want. Design your physical spaces to promote positive thinking. Your workspace, your home, even your car should be organized and optimized to support productive mental states. Remove clutter that creates mental chaos. Add visual reminders of your goals and achievements. Create spaces that inspire action rather than passivity. Control your social environment ruthlessly. The people you spend time with have an enormous influence on your thinking patterns. If you're surrounded by people who constantly complain, make excuses, and focus on problems, their negativity will gradually infect your own thinking. If you're surrounded by people who take action, solve problems, and focus on growth, their positivity will elevate your own mental patterns. This doesn't mean you have to cut toxic people out of your life completely, but it does mean you need to be intentional about limiting their influence and balancing their negativity with positive influences. Seek out mentors, peers, and communities that embody the kind of thinking you want to develop. Social immunity is about developing the ability to maintain positive thinking even when you're surrounded by negativity. This is crucial because you can't always control your environment, and you will inevitably encounter negative people and situations. Practice emotional boundaries. Learn to observe other people's negative emotions without absorbing them. When someone complains to you, you can listen and show empathy without taking on their emotional state. When someone tries to discourage you from pursuing your goals, you can acknowledge their concerns without letting their fears become your fears. Develop opinion immunity. One of the biggest sources of negative thinking is worrying about what other people think of you. But most people's opinions are based on their own fears, limitations, and insecurities rather than accurate assessments of your potential. Learning to value your own judgment over other people's opinions is essential for mental immunity. Practice this by making decisions based on your own values and goals, rather than on what you think others expect of you. Start with small decisions: what to wear, what to eat, how to spend your free time, and gradually work up to bigger decisions about your career, relationships, and life direction. Create positive feedback loops that reinforce mental immunity. Track and celebrate every time you successfully resist negative thinking or maintain a positive mindset in a challenging situation. Keep a daily log of mental victories, no matter how small. This creates evidence that your mental immune system is working and motivates you to continue strengthening it. The goal is to reach a point where negative thinking feels foreign and uncomfortable, like trying to wear clothes that don't fit. When your mental immune system is strong, negative thoughts will feel obviously wrong, and you'll naturally reject them without conscious effort. This level of mental immunity doesn't happen overnight, but it's absolutely achievable with consistent practice. As you build mental strength, optimize your environment, and develop social immunity, you'll find that negative thinking has less and less power over your life. Eventually, you'll reach a state where positive, productive thinking is your natural default, and negativity can only affect you if you consciously choose to engage with it. Chapter 9. The Psychology of Relentless Optimism. True mental dominance goes beyond just eliminating negative thinking. It requires developing what I call relentless optimism, a mindset so powerfully positive that it becomes your competitive advantage in every area of life. This is not naive positivity or wishful thinking. This is a scientifically grounded psychological strategy that high performers use to achieve extraordinary results. Relentless optimism is different from regular optimism in three crucial ways. First, it's based on evidence and action rather than hope and fantasy. Second, it's maintained even in the face of setbacks and failures. Third, it's weaponized, used as a tool to create results rather than just feel good. The foundation of relentless optimism is what psychologists call an internal locus of control. This means believing that your actions have more influence over your outcomes than external circumstances do. People with an internal locus of control see themselves as the primary driver of their success or failure. People with an external locus of control see themselves as victims of circumstances beyond their control. This belief system is not just motivational, it's practical. When you believe that your actions determine your results, you naturally focus on what you can control rather than what you can't. You spend your mental energy looking for solutions rather than dwelling on problems. You take more action because you believe action will make a difference. Develop internal locus of control by taking responsibility for everything in your life, even things that aren't technically your fault. If you get rejected for a job, instead of blaming the employer, ask what you could have done differently in your application or interview. If a relationship doesn't work out, instead of focusing on the other person's flaws, examine what you could have done better. This doesn't mean blaming yourself for everything bad that happens. It means looking for the aspects of every situation that you can influence or control, no matter how small, and focusing your attention there. This mental habit trains your brain to see opportunities for influence rather than reasons for helplessness. The second component of relentless optimism is solution-focused thinking. Most people are problem-focused. When they encounter an obstacle, they spend most of their mental energy analyzing the problem, understanding why it exists, and often complaining about it. But successful people are solution-focused. They spend minimal time on the problem and maximum time on potential solutions. Train yourself to shift immediately from problem identification to solution generation. When you encounter any challenge, give yourself exactly 60 seconds to understand the problem. Then spend all remaining time brainstorming solutions. Don't allow yourself to dwell on the problem longer than necessary to understand it. Practice solution multiplication. For every problem you identify, force yourself to generate at least 3 possible solutions. This trains your brain to see multiple paths forward rather than getting stuck thinking there's only one way to handle a situation. The more solutions you can generate, the more optimistic you'll feel about your ability to overcome any obstacle. The third component is failure reframing. People with relentless optimism don't experience failure the same way that average people do. They don't see failure as evidence that they're not capable or that their goals are unrealistic. They see failure as data that helps them improve their approach. Develop a failure portfolio. a collection of every significant failure you've experienced, along with the lessons you learned from each one. Review this portfolio regularly and notice how each failure contributed to your current knowledge and capabilities. This practice transforms failure from something to fear into something to value. When new failures occur, immediately ask yourself 3 questions. What did I learn from this? How does this information help me improve my approach? What would I do differently next time? This reframing process should happen within hours of any setback, before negative thinking has a chance to take root. The 4th component is momentum thinking. People with relentless optimism understand that success is not a single event, but a series of small wins that build momentum over time. They focus more on maintaining forward progress than on achieving perfect outcomes. Celebrate micro-wins obsessively. Every small step toward your goals deserves recognition and celebration. Made 1 sales call? Celebrate. Worked out for 20 minutes? Celebrate. Had 1 productive conversation? Celebrate. These celebrations reinforce the neural pathways associated with taking action and build positive momentum that makes future action easier. Create momentum triggers. Specific actions you can take to generate positive momentum whenever you feel stuck or discouraged. This might be completing a simple task you've been avoiding, doing something physical to change your energy, or reviewing your previous achievements to remind yourself of your capabilities. The 5th component is possibility expansion. Most people think in terms of limitation. They see all the reasons why something won't work, or why they're not capable of achieving what they want. People with relentless optimism think in terms of possibility. They see opportunities, potential solutions, and ways to grow into the person who can achieve their goals. Practice what if thinking focused on positive outcomes. Instead of asking, what if this doesn't work? Ask, what if this works better than I expected? Instead of, what if I'm not good enough? Ask, what if I'm more capable than I realize? Instead of, what if I fail? Ask, what if success is easier than I think? This is not denial of reality. It's strategic focus. Negative possibilities and positive possibilities both exist in any situation. Relentless optimism means consciously choosing to focus on the positive possibilities because that focus leads to more action and better results. Study people who have achieved what you want to achieve, not to copy their exact methods, but to expand your sense of what's possible. If someone else has overcome similar obstacles or achieved similar goals, that's proof that it can be done. Their success becomes evidence for your optimism rather than a source of comparison and discouragement. The 6th component is energy management. Relentless optimism requires high mental energy, and high mental energy requires protecting yourself from energy drains while actively seeking energy sources. Identify and eliminate energy vampires, activities, people, and thoughts that drain your mental energy without providing value. This includes excessive news consumption, toxic relationships, unproductive worry, and any activities that leave you feeling depleted rather than energized. Actively cultivate energy sources, activities that restore and increase your mental energy. This includes physical exercise, time in nature, learning new skills, meaningful work, and relationships that inspire and support you. Schedule these activities as non-negotiable parts of your routine. Relentless optimism is not a personality trait you're born with. It's a skill you develop through practice. Start by choosing one component and focusing on it for 30 days until it becomes automatic. Then, add another component. Within 6 months of consistent practice, you'll find that optimistic thinking becomes your default response to any situation. This optimistic mindset becomes a massive competitive advantage because most people default to negative thinking when faced with challenges. While others are paralyzed by doubt and fear, you'll be energized by possibility and opportunity. While others see obstacles, you'll see stepping stones. While others give up, you'll keep pushing forward with unshakable confidence that you'll eventually find a way to succeed. Chapter 10. Mental Models of Peak Performers. The difference between average people and peak performers is not talent, luck, or circumstances. It's the mental models they use to interpret reality and make decisions. Mental models are the invisible frameworks that determine how you process information, what you pay attention to, and what actions you take. Peak performers have developed specific mental models that automatically generate productive thoughts and effective actions. Understanding and adopting these mental models is the fastest way to upgrade your thinking from average to exceptional. When you change your mental models, you change everything. Your perception of problems becomes perception of opportunities. Your reaction to setbacks becomes fuel for comebacks. Your relationship with failure becomes a pathway to mastery. The first mental model is the growth framework. Average people operate from a fixed mindset, believing that their abilities and intelligence are predetermined and unchangeable. They see challenges as threats to their self-image and avoid situations where they might fail or look incompetent. Peak performers operate from a growth mindset, believing that abilities and intelligence can be developed through effort and learning. They see challenges as opportunities to improve and actively seek situations that push them beyond their current capabilities. This difference in mental models creates completely different responses to the same situations. When an average person encounters a skill they don't have, they think, "I'm not good at this," and avoid situations that require that skill. When a peak performer encounters a skill they don't have, they think, "I'm not good at this yet," and actively work to develop that skill. Adopt the growth framework by adding "yet" to any limiting statement about yourself. "I'm not confident" becomes, "I'm not confident yet." "I don't know how to do this" becomes, "I don't know how to do this yet." This simple addition transforms fixed limitations into temporary challenges that can be overcome through effort and learning. The second mental model is the ownership framework. Average people operate from a victim mentality, focusing on external factors that are preventing them from succeeding. They spend mental energy complaining about unfair circumstances, bad luck, and other people's behavior. Peak performers operate from an ownership mentality, taking responsibility for their results, regardless of external circumstances. They spend mental energy identifying what they can control and influence. This ownership framework doesn't mean accepting blame for everything bad that happens. It means looking for your sphere of influence in every situation and focusing your energy there. Even when external factors are genuinely unfair or difficult, peak performers ask, "Given these circumstances, what can I do to improve my situation?" Practice the ownership framework by ending every complaint with an action step. If you catch yourself thinking, "My boss doesn't appreciate me," Add, so I'm going to document my achievements and schedule a meeting to discuss my contributions. If you think the economy is making it hard to find clients, add, so I'm going to improve my skills and find new ways to add value. The third mental model is the systems framework. Average people focus on goals and outcomes, which are largely outside their direct control. They set goals like lose 20 pounds or make 6 figures and then feel frustrated when progress is slow or inconsistent. Peak performers focus on systems and processes, which are entirely within their control. They create daily systems that, when followed consistently, naturally produce the outcomes they want. A weight loss goal becomes a daily system of specific eating and exercise habits. An income goal becomes a daily system of specific activities that generate value and revenue. A relationship goal becomes a daily system of specific behaviors that build connection and trust. The systems framework creates more consistent action because it focuses on what you do today rather than what you want to achieve someday. It also creates more sustainable motivation because you can win every single day by following your system, regardless of whether you've achieved your ultimate goal yet. Design your own systems by breaking down your biggest goals into daily actions that you can control completely. If your goal is to build a business, your daily system might include making 10 sales calls, writing 500 words of content, and learning something new about your industry. If your goal is to get in shape, your daily system might include 30 minutes of exercise, tracking your food intake, and getting 8 hours of sleep. The fourth mental model is the leverage framework. Average people think in terms of linear effort. If they want twice the results, they try to work twice as hard. Peak performers think in terms of leverage. They look for ways to get exponential results from the same amount of effort. They understand that working harder is limited by time and energy, but working smarter can produce unlimited results. Leverage comes from 3 sources: tools and technology that multiply your capabilities, systems and processes that multiply your efficiency, and people and relationships that multiply your reach. Peak performers are constantly looking for ways to use these leverage sources to amplify their efforts. Adopt the leverage framework by regularly asking yourself 3 questions. What tools could help me do this faster or better? What systems could help me do this more efficiently? What relationships could help me do this with greater impact? Then, actively work to develop the tools, systems, and relationships that will give you the greatest leverage. The fifth mental model is the long-term framework. Average people make decisions based on short-term emotions and immediate gratification. They choose what feels good now rather than what will serve them best in the future. Peak performers make decisions based on long-term vision and delayed gratification. They choose what will serve their future self even when it requires sacrifice in the present. This long-term thinking creates a massive competitive advantage because most people are optimizing for today while peak performers are optimizing for 10 years from now. While others are choosing comfort, convenience, and immediate pleasure, peak performers are choosing growth, challenge, and long-term success. Develop long-term thinking by regularly asking yourself, how will my future self feel about this decision? What would the person I want to become choose to do right now? Is this decision moving me toward my long-term vision or away from it? Let these questions guide your choices even when the long-term choice is more difficult in the short term. The sixth mental model is the abundance framework. Average people operate from scarcity thinking, believing that success is limited and that other people's achievements somehow diminish their own opportunities. This creates competition, jealousy, and zero-sum thinking. Peak performers operate from abundance thinking, believing that success can be created and expanded, and that other people's achievements can inspire and inform their own success. Abundance thinking leads to collaboration instead of competition, learning instead of jealousy, and opportunity seeking instead of opportunity hoarding. When you believe that success is abundant, you naturally look for ways to create value for others, which ultimately creates more value for yourself. Practice abundance thinking by celebrating other people's successes instead of comparing yourself to them. When you see someone achieve something you want, ask yourself, what can I learn from their success? How can their achievement inspire my own efforts? What opportunities does their success create for me? These mental models work together to create a completely different way of experiencing reality. When you consistently apply these frameworks, challenges become opportunities, setbacks become lessons, competition becomes inspiration, and your default response to any situation becomes, how can I use this to grow and improve? The key is to practice these mental models consciously until they become automatic. Start with one framework and apply it consistently for 30 days until it becomes natural. Then add another framework. Within 6 months, these peak performance mental models will become your default way of thinking, and your results will reflect this upgrade in your mental operating system. Chapter 11. The 24-hour mental reset protocol. Sometimes, negative thinking becomes so deeply entrenched that you need a complete mental reset. This happens when you've been stuck in negative patterns for weeks or months, when a major setback has shattered your confidence, or when you've allowed toxic influences to poison your mindset. In these situations, gradual change isn't enough. You need a systematic protocol to completely reset your mental state within 24 hours. The 24-hour mental reset protocol is designed to break you out of any negative thinking spiral and restore your mental clarity, confidence, and motivation. This is not a quick fix or temporary mood boost. This is a comprehensive system that addresses every aspect of your mental state and creates lasting change in a single day. The protocol consists of 6 phases that must be completed in order within a 24-hour period. Each phase targets a different component of negative thinking and builds momentum for the next phase. The key is total commitment. You cannot skip phases or extend the timeline. This concentrated effort creates breakthrough results that would normally take weeks to achieve. Phase 1 is mental purging. For the first 2 hours, you're going to identify and externalize every negative thought that's been plaguing your mind. Get a notebook and write down every worry, fear, doubt, and negative belief you've been carrying. Don't edit or filter. Just dump everything onto paper. Write about what's been frustrating you, what you're afraid of, what you've been avoiding, what you think you can't do, and what you believe is wrong with your life. Be brutally honest. Include the thoughts you're ashamed of, the fears you've never admitted to anyone, and the self-criticisms you repeat in your head. This process serves 2 purposes. First, it gets these thoughts out of your head where they can loop endlessly and onto paper where you can see them objectively. Second, it reveals patterns in your thinking that you might not have noticed while these thoughts were swirling around in your mind. After you've written everything down, read through your list and circle the thoughts that appear most frequently or feel most emotionally charged. These are your primary mental enemies, the specific negative thoughts that have been doing the most damage to your confidence and motivation. Phase 2 is pattern interruption. For the next hour, you're going to completely disrupt your normal patterns and routines. Take a cold shower, go for a vigorous walk or run, clean and organize your living space, or do any physical activity that requires focus and effort. The goal is to create a clear break between your old mental state and your new one. Physical activity changes your brain chemistry, releasing endorphins and other chemicals that naturally improve your mood and mental clarity. The act of breaking your normal routine also signals to your brain that change is happening. During this phase, avoid all inputs that could reinforce negative thinking. Don't check social media, watch news, or consume any entertainment. Don't have conversations about problems or challenges. Focus entirely on physical activity and environmental changes that support a positive mental state. Phase 3 is evidence gathering. For the next 2 hours, you're going to systematically collect evidence that contradicts your negative thoughts. Review your achievements, successes, positive feedback you've received, challenges you've overcome, and skills you've developed. Look through old emails, text messages, photos, awards, or any other records of positive experiences and accomplishments. Write down specific examples of times when you succeeded, when others recognized your value, when you overcame obstacles, or when you grew from difficult experiences. The goal is to build an overwhelming case against your negative thoughts. For every negative belief you identified in Phase 1, find at least 3 pieces of evidence that contradict it. If you believe you're not capable, find examples of capabilities you've demonstrated. If you believe you always fail, find examples of successes you've achieved. This phase is crucial because negative thinking creates selective memory. You remember failures vividly while forgetting successes completely. By systematically reviewing your positive experiences, you restore balance to your self-perception and undermine the foundation of negative thinking. Phase 4 is future visioning. For the next hour, you're going to create a detailed, compelling vision of your future that excites and motivates you. Write down exactly what you want your life to look like in 1 year, 5 years, and 10 years. Be specific about what you want to achieve, what kind of person you want to become, what kind of relationships you want to have, and what kind of impact you want to make. Don't limit yourself based on your current circumstances or past failures. Imagine what would be possible if you operated at your full potential. Visualize this future as if it's already happening. Imagine how you'll feel when you achieve these goals, what your typical day will look like, how others will see you, and what new opportunities will be available to you. Make this vision so compelling that you feel genuine excitement about working toward it. Phase 5 is system design. For the next 2 hours, you're going to create specific systems and action plans that will turn your vision into reality. Break down your goals into concrete steps. Identify the habits you need to develop, and design accountability systems that will keep you on track. Create daily, weekly, and monthly action plans that focus on the highest impact activities. Identify potential obstacles and develop strategies for overcoming them. Design reward systems that will maintain your motivation and momentum. The key is to make your action plans so specific and detailed that you know exactly what to do every day. Vague goals create uncertainty and anxiety. Specific action plans create confidence and clarity. Phase 6 is commitment and activation. For the final hour, you're going to make a formal commitment to your new mindset and take the first concrete action toward your goals. Write out a personal manifesto that defines who you're choosing to become and what you're committing to do. Sign this manifesto and post it somewhere you'll see it every day. Then immediately take one significant action toward your most important goal. Make a phone call, send an email, start a project, or do something that demonstrates your commitment to change. This final action is crucial because it proves to your brain that this reset is real, not just another temporary motivation boost. When you take immediate action, you begin creating new neural pathways that support your new mindset. The 24-hour period after completing this protocol is critical. You must maintain the mental state you've created by following your new action plans, avoiding negative influences, and continuing to reinforce positive thinking patterns. The reset creates momentum, but maintaining that momentum requires ongoing effort. Most people who complete this protocol report dramatic improvements in their mental state, motivation, and clarity about their direction. The concentrated effort required to complete all 6 phases in 24 hours creates breakthrough results that would normally take weeks or months to achieve gradually. However, this protocol is not magic. It's psychology and neuroscience applied intensively. The results will last only as long as you continue applying the principles and maintaining the systems you create during the reset. Use this protocol when you need a breakthrough. But remember that lasting change requires consistent daily practice. Chapter 12. Advanced Psychological Warfare Tactics. At this level of mental mastery, you're ready to learn the most advanced psychological tactics that separate true mental warriors from everyone else. These are not basic positive thinking techniques. These are sophisticated psychological strategies that allow you to maintain unshakable mental strength even in the most challenging circumstances. The first advanced tactic is cognitive reframing under pressure. Anyone can maintain positive thinking when things are going well, but peak performers have the ability to instantly reframe negative situations, even while they're experiencing intense stress, pressure, or adversity. This requires developing what psychologists call cognitive flexibility, the ability to consciously choose how to interpret any situation. Most people have automatic interpretations that they never question. When something bad happens, their brain immediately frames it as a disaster, a personal failing, or evidence that life is unfair. But you can train yourself to consciously choose more empowering interpretations in real time. When you lose a job, instead of automatically thinking, "This is terrible," you can consciously choose to think, "This is an opportunity to find something better." When you experience rejection, instead of thinking, "I'm not good enough," you can choose to think, "I'm one step closer to finding the right fit." The key is having pre-prepared reframes for common negative situations. Spend time now developing empowering interpretations for the types of setbacks you're likely to encounter. When these situations arise, you'll be able to instantly access productive interpretations instead of falling into automatic negative thinking. The second tactic is emotional Aikido. In martial arts, Aikido teaches you to redirect an opponent's energy rather than opposing it directly. Emotional Aikido teaches you to redirect negative emotions toward productive outcomes rather than trying to suppress or fight them. When you feel anger, instead of trying to calm down, channel that energy into determined action toward your goals. When you feel fear, instead of trying to eliminate it, use it as fuel for preparation and skill development. When you feel frustration, instead of venting or complaining, redirect it into problem-solving and innovation. This tactic recognizes that emotions contain energy that can be harnessed for productive purposes. Instead of seeing negative emotions as problems to solve, you see them as resources to redirect. This approach is much more effective than trying to suppress emotions, which usually makes them stronger and more persistent. The third tactic is preemptive mental conditioning. Instead of waiting for challenges to arise and then responding to them, you can condition your mind in advance to handle specific types of adversity with predetermined responses. Professional athletes use this technique by visualizing high-pressure scenarios and rehearsing their optimal responses. Navy SEALs use stress inoculation training to prepare for extreme situations. You can use the same approach to prepare for the mental challenges you're likely to face. Identify the situations that typically trigger negative thinking for you: criticism, rejection, failure, uncertainty, conflict. Then mentally rehearse handling these situations with confidence and composure. Visualize yourself receiving criticism and responding professionally, experiencing rejection and maintaining self-confidence, facing failure and immediately planning your next attempt. This mental rehearsal creates neural pathways that automatically activate when you encounter these situations in real life. Instead of being caught off guard and defaulting to negative thinking, you'll have well-rehearsed, positive responses ready to deploy. The fourth tactic is strategic vulnerability. Most people try to protect themselves from all negative experiences, but this actually makes them more vulnerable when adversity inevitably occurs. Strategic vulnerability involves deliberately exposing yourself to controlled amounts of discomfort, criticism, and failure, so that you build genuine resilience. This might mean actively seeking feedback, even when you know it will include criticism, taking on challenges where failure is possible, or putting yourself in situations where you might be rejected or judged. The goal is not to suffer unnecessarily, but to build genuine confidence that comes from knowing you can handle whatever life throws at you. When you've voluntarily faced and survived criticism, rejection, and failure in controlled circumstances, these experiences lose their power to trigger negative thinking when they occur naturally. You develop what psychologists call anti-fragility, the ability to actually become stronger from stress and adversity. The fifth tactic is attention hijacking. Your brain can only focus on one thing at a time, so by strategically directing your attention, you can prevent negative thoughts from taking root, even when they arise. Develop a library of attention anchors, specific thoughts, activities, or sensations that immediately capture your full attention. This might be focusing intensely on your breathing, engaging in complex mental math, describing your physical environment in detail, or thinking about a project that excites you. When you notice negative thinking beginning to emerge, Immediately shift your attention to one of these anchors. Don't try to fight the negative thoughts. Simply redirect your attention so completely that the negative thoughts can't maintain their grip on your consciousness. The sixth tactic is mental time travel. Negative thinking often focuses on past failures or future fears, keeping you trapped outside the present moment where all your power actually exists. Mental time travel teaches you to consciously move between past, present, and future in ways that serve your goals. When negative thoughts about the past arise, consciously travel to positive memories that contradict the negative narrative. When fears about the future dominate your thinking, travel to imagined future scenarios where you've successfully overcome current challenges. The key is conscious control over your mental timeline. Instead of being randomly pulled into negative memories or fearful projections, you choose which aspects of past and future to focus on based on what will support your current goals and emotional state. The seventh tactic is psychological aikido. This involves using other people's negativity and criticism as fuel for your own success, rather than allowing it to damage your confidence. When someone doubts your abilities, criticizes your goals, or tries to discourage you, you transform their negativity into motivation. Instead of being hurt or discouraged by criticism, you think, "I'll prove them wrong." Instead of being demoralized by doubt, you think, "I'll show them what's possible." Instead of being paralyzed by discouragement, you think, "Their lack of vision doesn't limit my potential." This tactic requires developing such strong internal confidence that external negativity actually strengthens your resolve rather than weakening it. You become like a mental black hole that absorbs negative energy from others and converts it into determination and motivation. These advanced tactics require significant practice to master, but they represent the highest level of mental warfare skills. When you can deploy these strategies automatically, you become virtually immune to negative thinking, regardless of what circumstances you face. You develop unshakable mental strength that allows you to maintain focus, confidence, and motivation even in the most challenging situations. Chapter 13. Building Unbreakable Mental Resilience. Mental resilience is your ability to maintain psychological strength and continue functioning effectively even when facing extreme stress, adversity, or trauma. While most people's mental state fluctuates dramatically based on external circumstances, truly resilient people maintain consistent inner strength regardless of what happens around them. Building unbreakable mental resilience requires understanding that resilience is not a personality trait you're born with. It's a skill you develop through specific training and practice. The most resilient people in the world have systematically conditioned themselves to handle adversity through deliberate psychological training. The foundation of mental resilience is stress inoculation. This involves gradually exposing yourself to increasing levels of stress and challenge so that your psychological immune system becomes stronger. Just as physical exercise creates physical strength by placing controlled stress on your muscles, psychological exercise creates mental strength by placing controlled stress on your mind. Start with micro-stresses that challenge you slightly, but don't overwhelm you. This might be taking cold showers, exercising when you don't feel like it, having difficult conversations you've been avoiding, or completing tasks that require sustained focus despite distractions. The key is that these stresses are voluntary and controlled. You're choosing to face small amounts of adversity when you're mentally prepared, which builds your capacity to handle larger amounts of adversity when it arrives unexpectedly. Gradually increase the intensity of these challenges as your resilience grows. What felt stressful last month should feel manageable this month, allowing you to take on bigger challenges. This progressive overload principle works for mental strength just as it works for physical strength. The second component of resilience is emotional regulation under pressure. Most people's emotions become chaotic when they face significant stress, which clouds their judgment and reduces their effectiveness. Resilient people maintain emotional stability even in crisis situations. Develop emotional regulation through breathing techniques that you practice daily and can deploy instantly when needed. The 4-7-8 breathing pattern is particularly effective. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 7 counts, exhale for 8 counts. This activates your parasympathetic nervous system and creates immediate calm. Practice emotional labeling when you feel strong emotions arising. Instead of being overwhelmed by anger, anxiety, or frustration, mentally label these emotions. I notice I'm feeling anxious right now. This creates psychological distance between you and the emotion, preventing it from controlling your thinking and behavior. The third component is cognitive restructuring under adversity. When facing serious challenges, your brain will automatically generate catastrophic thoughts and worst-case scenarios. Resilient people have trained themselves to consciously restructure these thoughts in real time. Develop a set of resilient thinking patterns that you can access when facing adversity. Instead of, "This is terrible," think, "This is challenging, and I'll figure out how to handle it." Instead of, "I can't handle this," think, "I've handled difficult situations before, and I'll handle this one too." Instead of, "Everything is falling apart," think, "This is one problem, and problems can be solved." Practice these cognitive restructuring techniques during minor stresses so they become automatic during major crises. The goal is to maintain rational, solution-focused thinking even when your emotions are intense and your circumstances are difficult. The fourth component is meaning-making capability. Resilient people are able to find purpose and meaning even in painful experiences. They don't just survive adversity, they use it as fuel for growth, wisdom, and contribution to others. Develop the habit of asking, "How can this experience make me stronger, wiser, or more valuable to others?" when facing any challenge. This question shifts your focus from victim thinking to growth thinking, transforming adversity from something that happens to you into something that develops you. Keep a resilience journal where you record lessons learned from difficult experiences. Review this journal regularly to remind yourself of how challenges have contributed to your growth and to develop confidence in your ability to benefit from future adversity. The fifth component is social support systems. No one is resilient in isolation. The most psychologically strong people have networks of relationships that provide emotional support, practical assistance, and perspective during difficult times. Actively cultivate relationships with people who embody the mental strength you want to develop. Seek out mentors who have overcome significant challenges, peers who are committed to growth, and communities that value resilience and personal development. Be willing to provide support to others as well. Helping others through their challenges builds your own resilience by reinforcing your sense of capability and purpose. The act of supporting others also creates reciprocal relationships that will support you when you need it. The sixth component is physical foundation. Mental resilience is impossible without physical resilience. Your brain requires optimal nutrition, regular exercise, adequate sleep, and stress management to maintain peak psychological performance. Treat your physical health as the foundation of your mental strength. You cannot maintain psychological resilience while neglecting your physical foundation. Regular exercise, particularly activities that challenge you physically, builds both physical and mental toughness. The seventh component is purpose alignment. People who have a clear sense of purpose are more resilient than those who don't, because they have something larger than themselves to draw strength from during difficult times. Identify your core values and life purpose so clearly that they can sustain you through any challenge. When you know why you're pursuing your goals and how your efforts contribute to something meaningful, temporary setbacks become less significant and less likely to derail your progress. The eighth component is recovery protocols. Even the most resilient people need systems for recovering from intense stress and adversity. Without proper recovery, even strong people eventually burn out or break down. Develop specific practices for mental and emotional recovery that you use regularly. This might include meditation, time in nature, creative activities, physical relaxation techniques, or any practices that restore your psychological energy and perspective. Schedule recovery time just as you would schedule any other important activity. Resilience is not about never needing rest. It's about taking care of yourself so effectively that you can handle whatever challenges arise. True mental resilience means that your inner strength becomes independent of external circumstances. You maintain confidence, clarity, and motivation, whether things are going well or poorly. You become like a deeply rooted tree that bends with the storm but never breaks, always returning to its natural upright position once the storm passes. Chapter 14. Maintaining mental mastery for life. Achieving mental mastery is one challenge, but maintaining it for life is an entirely different challenge. Most people experience temporary breakthroughs in their thinking and motivation, only to gradually slide back into old patterns of negativity and limitation. True mental mastery requires systems and practices that sustain peak mental performance across decades, not just days or weeks. The first principle of lifelong mental mastery is treating your mind like a high-performance machine that requires daily maintenance. Just as elite athletes never stop training, even after reaching the top of their sport, you must never stop practicing mental conditioning, even after achieving mental mastery. Develop non-negotiable daily mental hygiene practices that maintain your psychological fitness. This includes morning routines that set a positive tone for your day, regular meditation or mindfulness practices that keep you aware of your thinking patterns, and evening reviews that help you learn from each day's experiences. These practices should be as automatic and consistent as brushing your teeth. They're not optional activities you do when you feel like it. They're essential maintenance that keeps your mental operating system running at peak performance. The second principle is continuous learning and adaptation. The world is constantly changing, and the mental strategies that work today may not be sufficient for tomorrow's challenges. Lifelong mental mastery requires a commitment to continuously upgrading your psychological skills and knowledge. Stay current with research in psychology, neuroscience, and peak performance. Read books, attend seminars, and learn from people who have achieved the kind of mental mastery you want to maintain. Your mental operating system should be constantly evolving and improving, just like software that receives regular updates. The third principle is environmental vigilance. Your mental state is heavily influenced by your environment, and these influences are often subtle and gradual. You might not notice that certain people, activities, or information sources are slowly eroding your mental clarity until significant damage has been done. Regularly audit your environment for influences that support or undermine your mental mastery. This includes the people you spend time with, the information you consume, the physical spaces you occupy, and the activities that fill your time. Be ruthless about eliminating influences that contribute to negative thinking or mental weakness. Create buffer zones around your mind by controlling inputs and establishing boundaries. This might mean limiting exposure to negative news, avoiding toxic people, or creating physical spaces that support positive thinking and productive action. The fourth principle is stress testing and recalibration. Periodically expose yourself to controlled challenges that test your mental strength and reveal areas where your skills might be declining. This is like stress testing software to identify vulnerabilities before they cause system failures. Intentionally place yourself in situations that require mental toughness, emotional regulation, and cognitive flexibility. This might involve taking on challenging projects, engaging in difficult conversations, or facing fears that you've been avoiding. These stress tests keep your mental skills sharp and reveal areas that need additional training. The fifth principle is teaching and mentoring others. One of the most effective ways to maintain mastery of any skill is to teach it to others. When you help other people develop mental mastery, you reinforce your own understanding and commitment to these principles. Look for opportunities to share what you've learned about mental mastery with others. This might involve formal mentoring relationships, informal conversations with friends and colleagues, or creating content that helps others develop mental strength. Teaching forces you to clarify your own understanding and keeps you accountable to practicing what you preach. The sixth principle is regular mental detoxification. Even with excellent mental hygiene, negative thoughts and limiting beliefs can gradually accumulate in your subconscious mind. Periodic mental detoxification helps clear these accumulations and restore peak mental performance. Schedule regular mental detox periods where you engage in activities that clear mental clutter and restore psychological clarity. This might involve meditation retreats, time in nature, journaling sessions, or any practices that help you process and release negative mental content. The seventh principle is purpose evolution. Your sense of purpose and meaning must evolve as you grow and change throughout your life. What motivates you at 25 may not motivate you at 45, and maintaining mental mastery requires staying connected to purposes that inspire sustained effort. Regularly examine and update your life purpose to ensure it remains compelling and meaningful. As you achieve goals and develop new capabilities, your purpose should expand to include bigger challenges and greater contributions. This evolution keeps you engaged and motivated throughout your entire life. The eighth principle is legacy thinking. Mental mastery is not just about your own success and happiness. It's about the example you set and the impact you have on others. Thinking about the legacy you want to leave creates motivation that transcends personal benefit and sustains effort through temporary difficulties. Consider how you want to be remembered and what kind of influence you want to have on the people in your life. This legacy perspective provides motivation that lasts long after personal goals have been achieved and creates accountability that extends beyond your own immediate interests. The ninth principle is systematic review and optimization. Regularly review your mental performance and look for opportunities to optimize your thinking patterns, emotional responses, and behavioral choices. This ongoing optimization ensures that you're constantly improving rather than just maintaining current levels of performance. Conduct monthly reviews of your mental performance, identifying patterns in your thinking and behavior that serve you well and patterns that could be improved. Treat your mind like a business that requires regular performance analysis and strategic adjustments. The 10th principle is emergency protocols. Even with excellent mental mastery, you will occasionally face situations that overwhelm your normal coping mechanisms. Having emergency protocols prepared in advance prevents temporary setbacks from becoming permanent regressions. Develop specific action plans for handling major life crises, unexpected failures, health challenges, relationship problems, and other situations that could potentially derail your mental mastery. Know exactly what resources to access, what practices to intensify, and what support systems to activate when facing serious challenges. Lifelong mental mastery is not about achieving a perfect state and maintaining it forever. It's about developing such strong mental fitness that you can handle whatever life brings, while continuously growing stronger and more capable. It's about building psychological resilience that increases rather than decreases with age and experience. Chapter 15. Your complete mental transformation roadmap. You now have all the knowledge and tools needed to completely transform your mental life. But knowledge without implementation is worthless. This final chapter provides you with a complete roadmap that turns everything you've learned into a systematic transformation process that will eliminate negative thinking from your life forever. Your mental transformation will happen in 4 distinct phases, each lasting approximately 30 days. Each phase builds on the previous one, creating momentum and establishing increasingly sophisticated mental skills. The key to success is completing each phase thoroughly before moving to the next one. Phase 1 is foundation building. During your first 30 days, you will establish the basic awareness and interruption skills that form the foundation of all advanced mental mastery. Your primary focus is developing the ability to recognize negative thoughts as they arise and interrupt them before they can influence your emotions and actions. Your daily practice during Phase 1 includes 3 core activities. First, conduct hourly mental check-ins, where you pause and observe your current thoughts and emotional state. Set phone reminders if necessary to ensure consistency. Second, practice the 5-step thought interruption process. Whenever you catch negative thinking, recognize, interrupt, challenge, replace, action. Third, complete a daily mental inventory, where you review the day's thinking patterns and identify areas for improvement. During this phase, don't worry about perfect execution. Your goal is simply to develop awareness of your thinking patterns and begin practicing intervention techniques. Most people are shocked to discover how much negative thinking they engage in unconsciously. This awareness alone will begin shifting your mental patterns in a positive direction. Phase 2 is pattern elimination. During your second 30 days, you will systematically identify and eliminate your most destructive, negative thinking patterns. You'll learn to recognize the specific triggers, thoughts, and situations that consistently lead to mental negativity and develop targeted strategies for handling each one. Your daily practice during Phase 2 expands to include pattern tracking and targeted intervention. Create a negative thinking log, where you record every instance of negative thinking along with its trigger emotional impact, and the intervention you used. Look for patterns in your triggers and develop specific strategies for handling your most common negative thinking scenarios. Practice advanced interruption techniques including thought interrogation, attention redirection, and emotional aikido. Begin implementing environmental changes that reduce your exposure to negative thinking triggers. This might involve changing your information diet, adjusting your social interactions, or modifying your physical environment. Phase 3 is positive programming. During your third 30 days, you will actively install new positive thinking patterns that automatically generate motivation, confidence, and solution-focused thinking. This goes beyond just eliminating negative thoughts to creating positive mental momentum. Your daily practice during Phase 3 includes cognitive rehearsal of positive thinking patterns, visualization of desired outcomes, and systematic evidence gathering that supports optimistic beliefs about your capabilities and potential. You'll also begin implementing the mental models of peak performers and practicing advanced techniques like strategic vulnerability and preemptive mental conditioning. Focus on building strong, positive feedback loops by taking daily actions that prove your positive thoughts are accurate. Every time you act despite fear, persist through difficulty, or achieve a goal you previously thought was impossible, you're programming your brain to default to positive expectations rather than negative ones. Phase 4 is mastery integration. During your fourth 30 days, you will integrate all your mental mastery skills into a seamless system that operates automatically without conscious effort. You'll also develop the advanced techniques and emergency protocols needed to maintain peak mental performance under any circumstances. Your daily practice during Phase 4 includes stress testing your mental skills through voluntary challenges, practicing advanced psychological warfare tactics, and developing the systems needed for lifelong mental mastery. You'll create your personal mental operating system that includes daily practices, weekly reviews, monthly optimizations, and annual upgrades. By the end of Phase 4, positive thinking will be your natural default state. Negative thoughts will still arise occasionally, but they'll feel foreign and uncomfortable, like wearing clothes that don't fit. You'll handle them automatically without losing emotional balance or behavioral momentum. Throughout all 4 phases, track your progress obsessively. Keep detailed records of your mental patterns, emotional states, and behavioral choices. Measure your progress not just by how you feel, but by the actions you take and the results you achieve. Mental transformation that doesn't lead to better results in the real world is not true transformation. After completing the initial 4-phase transformation, your ongoing practice focuses on maintenance and continued optimization. Continue your daily mental hygiene practices. Regularly stress test your mental skills. Stay current with new research and techniques, and look for opportunities to help others develop mental mastery. Remember that mental transformation is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process. Your mind will continuously evolve throughout your life, and maintaining mental mastery requires lifelong commitment to growth and improvement. But the initial 4-phase transformation will establish such strong psychological foundations that all future development becomes easier and more natural. The most important factor in your transformation success is consistency rather than perfection. It's better to practice these techniques imperfectly every day than to practice them perfectly occasionally. Your brain changes through repetition, not through occasional intense effort. Start immediately. Don't wait for perfect conditions, better circumstances, or more motivation. Begin implementing these techniques today, right now, with whatever time and energy you have available. The longer you delay, the longer you remain trapped in negative thinking patterns that are limiting your potential and destroying your happiness. Your mind is your most powerful tool for creating the life you want. When you master your thoughts, you master your emotions. When you master your emotions, you master your actions. When you master your actions, you master your results. And when you master your results, you master your life. The choice is yours. You can continue living with the mental patterns that have kept you stuck, or you can commit to the systematic process that will transform your mind and your life forever. The tools are in your hands. The roadmap is clear. The only question remaining is whether you have the courage to begin.